Welcome in, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight for this special live, for this group therapy conversation. I think we have a great conversation planned for tonight. But before we jump in, make sure you like the channel, like the video, subscribe to the channel. Share some of the content. I don't think I say that enough. Share it. As a matter of fact, if you think that there's anybody out there who would get some value from this type of conversation, let's go ahead and link them in. Let's make sure they don't miss out on this. Subscribe, share, join our growing community, check out our merch, consider volunteering, all that good stuff. Okay, so let me kind of set the framework here. Oh yeah, I see y'all coming in. Welcome in. Let me see here. I'll go ahead and throw some of this on there. Yeah, I like that. That speaks to me in a special place in my soul, if I had such a thing. Yep, sup peeps. You know what's funny? That's my daughter's favorite word, peeps. And consequently, it's my favorite Easter snack. So, hey, different strokes, different folks. You know what they say. All right, so this channel has a commitment to build community experiences for people growing together without superstition. We launched our weekly Sunday sessions last week in line with that commitment. And tonight we're furthering building on that commitment by hosting our first group therapy conversation. In my work, both before and after deconversion, I've kind of learned that people desperately want to be heard, to be held, and to be healed. Group therapy is our way of building that priority into our day-to-day operations, right? It's our commitment to maximize our moments in conversations with others. It's steeped in a basic understanding that we are better together and that we all have something of value to contribute to productive and progressive conversations. In the words of my wife, we are responsible for each other. That's nice, right? I kind of like that. Hello, my amazing community. Yeah. Okay, let me do some of these things in here. Laugh face. I love it. Hey, yo. Who does that remind me of? Stewie from Family Guy. I don't know why. That's who I hear saying that immediately. And then, yes, my amazing community. Eyes opening, hearts realigning. I love that. Eyes opening, heart realigning. We don't have multiple hearts. We're not octopus. Octopus, you know what it is. All right, so with that being said, I want to welcome you all to our very first group therapy, where we're hosting community conversations for unbelievers and the deconverted. And every now and then we'll bring some people in who are on the fringes of the faith, so we can have some conversation in good faith, pun intended, kind of. And while you're at it, I want you to go ahead and welcome to the stage my special guest for tonight's conversation. They're going to be our guest conversationalists. We have David McDonald of Deep Drinks and Tom Smith at But Consider This. Welcome aboard, fellas. You know what? I didn't give you any type of specific order, because I don't like to control people's impulses. But whichever of you want to go first, give us a brief introduction, tell our audience a little bit about yourselves and what brings you to this particular conversation tonight.
Dave, you got to go first.
I was about to say the same thing. Well, my name's Dave. I'm a former youth pastor, now agnostic atheist, and I arrived there from deeply considering my beliefs and why I believe what I believed. And now I run a channel where I talk to people over a drink of their choice, usually about the Bible, religion, philosophy, and human rights.
I love that. That was beautiful. Beautiful summation. All right, Tom, it's on you now.
I am also was formerly what you might call a youth pastor. Not ordained or anything specific like that, just in charge of a more evangelical style church. And just kind of realized going through that, helping people, managing people, I realized that through the church, the amount of help we were doing was extremely minimal compared to what we were trying to gain out of it. Like what we were trying, whether it be people, money, whether it just be like opportunities to grow our organization. That, along with many other things, which I think some will discuss here, is the reason I, left that organization. So.
I love it. I love it. You know, when you said not ordained, the thought ran through my mind like, what does ordained even really mean?
I, I,
At the
I,
end of the
It's
I
like
was also
becoming a Jedi
unordained.
master.
Yeah. It's actually really hard to get ordained as a youth pastor. Like it's like so many, like to become, well, at least in my church, it was so hard to become ordained as a youth pastor. You had to eventually become associate pastor before they'd even think about it, unless you're like in the youth pastor role for like 10 years. Like it was, yeah, there's just no need.
Yeah. I guess it was kind of like the training field, huh? Like this is where you go.
Mm.
This is where you go to prepare to be ordained at.
Yeah, exactly.
That's hilarious. That's hilarious. All right. Well, listen, we're going to jump into a little different conversation tonight. The topic is I left the church and I liked it. But was it worth it? You know, and to be honest, ever since I've come across the Stacy's Mom podcast, songs from that era have just kind of have been stuck in my head. You know,
Yeah.
so like literally every now and then someone randomly in my house just be like, Stacy's mom asked God it going on. You know, and like we're just you're like, oh man, and then you know, so then I kissed a girl and I liked it. I was like, all right, we're in that era, so I thought this would be a fun topic. I thought this would be a fun conversation to have, and one that I think a lot of people can identify with because there's some twists and turns in this move. And so I want to open up literally the title of this conversation is kind of our thematic thrust. We're going to walk through the conversation based on the title. Cheers, David. Yes. And so since the title is I left the church and I liked it, we're going to start with I left the church. And so I have a few questions for both of you, and I want us to kind of discuss this and see if we can bring some value out of this. My first question in this aspect of leading the church, why did you become a Christian in the first place? And ultimately, why did you decide to get involved in ministry? Because both of you, you know, not only did you decide to believe that this was true and invest your heart into it, you took that extra step and decided to make this a part of your vocation, your commitment to others, your commitment to yourself, and ultimately your commitment to God. So what was it that convinced you and specifically that made you want to get involved in ministry?
Tom, do you want to go first?
All right, we'll switch off every time. So we
Yeah,
don't have
okay. Yeah.
to make the short to get to the fun stuff. I was raised Lutheran. Well, I don't know if we were Lutheran to begin with. I think that's where we kind of just ended up after we bounced around churches a lot when I was young. So I don't like. I think if you went, like I lived with my grandparents, I think if you went and asked them, I don't think they could tell you like more than one doctrine of the Lutheran Church. Like it's not like a doctrine thing. So we were in the Lutheran Church, not as most people are. You get into college, you're not super serious about that kind of stuff anymore. And from there, after I met my wife, she was part of a more evangelical church. So, you know, like I'm Christian, I'll join it. I'll see what's going on. And it was the kind of attractive thing of like, oh, you guys really believe you can heal people. You guys really believe if you just think something hard enough in your brain, it'll happen. Like, I'll give this a shot. If it works, it works. And like kind of going down the more evangelical road from there and taking it more seriously, not just like the going to church part, but like the actually studying stuff. Like I should actually read the Bible, understand what it says, see what other smart people say about it, philosophy on it, whatever. And that kind of, kept snowballing from there into becoming kind of like I guess assistant pastor might be the best. It wasn't specifically youth, though our church was primarily younger people. It was really just assistant pastor. And when that pastor was gone, like I was in charge, having no training specific whatsoever. So that's kind of how it happened. It wasn't something I tried to do. I didn't try to become a pastor of a church. I didn't try to, teach anyone theology or anything like that. It's just the way the cookie crumbled, so to speak.
Yeah. I get that. I get that. David, what was it like for you?
Well, I grew up Christian, being read bedtime stories, like Christian bedtime stories and praying and things like that. But I wouldn't say like I was a Christian, and I definitely I even got involved in a church when I was a young teen. But I I used to say that I became a Christian when I had like that true born again experience, and that's when I later, at the age of 16, returned came to a youth group because 3 girls invited me, and I had a tremendously powerful spiritual experience. I was shaking, crying. I had people quote unquote prophesying over me, and they were just youth of my ilk, like people from my school and my age, and we were kind of in a revival-esque, like a revival from Wish.com kind of revival, like a very small revival type of thing happening in the youth group. And I just bought into it straight away. I remember looking at the leaders and just being amazed at these like youth and wanting straight away to get involved in youth ministry. But for me, I was quite an angry teenager. I was quite a depressed teenager. So it was such a shift for me. Like, people at school called me Captain Christian. And one of my best friends now, his name's Chris. When I was an emerging leader, when I was training to be a leader, he pulled out my pencil case at school, and he wrote on there. And I said, "Don't write anything sacrilegious on my pencil case, man. I'm having a bad day. Like, don't do it." And I'm having a Bible study with some new Christians at the school, like at the place that we're eating for lunch. And I look over, and he'd written, the church I was a part of at the time was called Christian Outreach Center, so COC. And he wrote in big whiteout across my pencil case, "Jesus loves the COC." Jesus loves COC, which obviously means Jesus loves cock. And and he goes, "What, man?" I looked down on him because I stood up, and he goes, "What, man? It means this Christian Outreach Center." And I just, without knowing it, I punched him in the face, and then pushed him over, and then I was like really ashamed of that. In the principal's office, I could hear him like defending me in the other room, like, "No, I provoked him. I shouldn't be, he shouldn't get in trouble," and all this stuff. And I'm like crying and think I'm the worst leader ever. But yeah, it was very quick. Like, so within probably few months, I was like in an emerging leaders thing. And then I removed myself from that week's like classes and stuff, and repented and did the whole, like, I felt so bad about punching my friend. And then, I got involved in leadership. And then 2 years later, after that, I left school to do ministry college. I did ministry college for a year. And then after that, the youth pastor felt called by God to go senior pastor at church down in New South Wales, and they needed a youth pastor, and he put my name forward, and I got the job as youth pastor. So,
wow, man.
And I was only 19, so it was pretty young.
Yeah, definitely. What just some of the common denominators that I kind of hear in that, which is actually a video that I was thinking about doing. I just started putting some notes together on it today. Was how we kind of come into this idea of belief. And I know the trajectory I was tracking is that we're first kind of culturally believers, wherever you are. Which means you're kind of born into this culture where society believes this thing. So you're kind of a believer by majority. There's this idea that everybody else can't be wrong. I know in the U.S. you see church in television. You hear people talking about God in television and saying, "Oh, this is the big God." Even in, like, I've been rewatching X-Men, like the X-Men back in the days, and like Charles Xavier used to literally preach to Logan and tell him to trust in God and put his faith in God and stuff. And I was like, holy crap, no wonder we were so indoctrinated. It was literally coming from everywhere. But it's that cultural idea. And then you're traditionally a believer. And that's a little deeper. That's more than just trust in society. That's trust in my family. My family wouldn't be lying to me. And then it gets a little deeper with the trust and authority, which all of these is ultimately fallacious at the end of the day. But, it becomes a trust and authority. These authority figures that I trust, they wouldn't be lying to me. And it's not just that they wouldn't be lying to me. It's that I believe they've done the work. They've done the research. They've had the true experiences. They have the answers. And there's no way they'd be pretending like they have the answers if they didn't actually, do that work. And so that is very interesting how we all kind of, in many ways, the thing that leads us to eventually that trust in our personal experience are those kind of cocoons, for lack of better words, that we come to first. And I call them a cocoon because each one has its own transformation period. Like everybody doesn't immediately transition from cultural Christian to traditional Christian. There are plenty of people who are cultural believers who don't believe like their families believe, who don't take it as serious as their family. That's just like another step. And then there are plenty of people who move beyond traditional believers to having that personal belief. And many of them become outlaws to their families. It's like, oh yeah, that's the weird one. That's the true believer,
Yeah. Do you know, I just want to just quickly say, you know how you said that, it was everywhere, this indoctrination. I remember being told that Pokemon was evil. Like a lot of like in my like later years. I grew up on Pokemon, I love Pokemon, but it was evil in my later years. And when I was going through a really rough time and like kind of like spiraling out of control and kind of walking away from God, I was like, I'm gonna watch the Pokemon series, and I'm going to try and discern with the spirit, or just see what the evil is in it, right? And 16 episodes in, 16 episodes in, I'm like watching it, and I'm still trying to find stuff. And this like Ash and Brock and all that, they're stuck on this like raft in the ocean. They're like, what do we do? And then Brock's like, I think it's Ash, one of them's like, why don't we get Pidgey and send him off? Remember the story of Noah? Noah sends a dove off and gets and I was like, holy, I don't know if I can swear, but like, damn, like they're teaching Bible stories, and this is evil. Like I just couldn't believe it. Like I was just like, it's everywhere.
Christianity exists in Pokemon, confirmed.
Yeah. it's part of the law, right?
Oh, they couldn't watch Dragon Tales? Oh, that's rough. I love the Dragon Tales. Oh man, it was so innocent. Maybe I need to go back and watch it now.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. That was off the like that couldn't be watched by one of my friends. Why? They're just mutant turtles. I just don't understand. I don't understand.
Well, I did have a friend that told me I couldn't watch Resident Evil because it was about demons, and I was like, no, it's science. It's a science experiment going wrong. There's no demons.
It's the word evil. It's the word evil in there. If it was called Resident Christ or something, Resident Good or something.
That's crazy how many people in the chat have had these similar issues with Pokemon. That's insane. Noah had 150.
That
was so the original good. Pokemon master.
That's amazing.
And see, this is why I like doing these. Not the Smurfs, and you are right, because when I was a pastor, true story. When I was a pastor, I got to keep this up for a while. When I was a pastor, I had a member of my church, and she was so sweet. I love her to this day. She was very faithful, and she was a former Jehovah's Witness, and so we did like a Hallelujah night party, and we were like talking about different costumes that we let our kids wear, and I was like, I think I'm gonna put my son in a Smurfs costume, and she was like dead serious, Pastor, do not do that. And like she was terrified. She was like, if you do that, I'm going to kick him. It's just a natural reflex. And I was like, what the freak happened to you? Who hurt you? Smurfs were lovable. But that just, wow.
That's amazing.
Oh man. Hello, Afro Atheist. Glad to have you in the house. Chat is kind of bumping right now. And that's one of the things that I love about this. AR is going like, he needs to be a comedian. I need, wow.
AR is funny. I do remember, like I see AR floating around a lot, and he's sometimes in my chat, and he's always bringing the memes. It's good stuff.
I love it. All right, so I'm gonna jump to the next question. Why did you stop? All right, so we kind of get this question of how you got into it, why you chose to be in the ministry. Why did you stop being a Christian, and why did you inevitably leave the church and ministry? And the reason I ask it that way is because there are plenty of people who deconvert and still participate, right? For example, I spent my first 5 years as an atheist sporadically involved in church organizations. What was it for you that made it clear not only you no longer wanted to believe this, but that you also no longer wanted to be identified with or affiliated with this particular community?
I'll go first, I guess. I actually didn't go to church for years before we even considered deconstructing and stuff, because what happened was my wife worked at Subway, and the only day off that she had was often Sunday. And every Sunday, one of us would say, we should go to church. And the other one would be like, no, let's like cuddle in bed. We're newly married, newly weds. And we're like, no, let's cuddle in bed. I'll make like, scrambled eggs, and we'll watch some like Gordon Ramsay or something. Like, and it was just such a lovely time in our like marriage. And we just kept, and then after about 4 or 5 weeks of not going to church after our honeymoon, people started just like saying, like, started being really mean about it. Like, oh, we think it's ridiculous that you're not coming and all this stuff. And we're like, whoa, what? And like people were like, are you walking away from God? And we're like, what? Which then made it awkward to go back. And then I started really thinking about like, because once you've seen behind the curtain, once you've been in ministry and you're no longer in ministry, like you're no longer serving in that capacity, you've seen behind the curtain. And you also, when you've been the person teaching from the pulpit, and then you have to sit there listening to people, like it's just like, you're just like 5 steps to be living a God-centric life. And you're just like, oh my God. Like I thought to myself, I have the best worship moments with me and God in the car. I pray the best when I'm, feeling in the mood to pray, and like I can pray by myself, which is biblical anyway. I can listen to the best preachers in the world from like podcasts and YouTube. What purpose does the local church serve? And the only thing I could come to was, well, the only thing that I got out of it, because I was no longer serving, not that I was against serving, but the only thing I could think of was, well, sometimes I go to church, and sometimes the people I want to connect with are there afterwards, and sometimes I'll hang out in the cafe afterwards, and we'll get to hang out for 30 minutes. But that's like half your Sunday wiped. You know what I mean? Like, and you get some wedges and your coffee, and you like sit there like, oh, the hell's your day? Yeah, it's good. Like, and it just felt so shallow to me. And I'm a deep guy, so I much preferred having a beer with someone. Not too many. Remember, I was still Christian, and having a beer with someone and talking about God or theological issues or something. That was church for me. So it started as a necessity, not going to church, just because we were newlyweds and we just really enjoyed being with each other. And then it got weird when people started thinking that something was going on when it wasn't. And then I was like, why are we going to church? And then we weren't necessarily against it anymore, but it's just like, why do we want to go? And then that was why we stopped going.
You know what's funny? Before we jump to you, Tom, what's funny? And if I was still a believer, I'd be like, "Oh man, this must be the Spirit. We're in the same vein. We're in the flow." Because this was another thing that was really on my mind today. Because I definitely shallow, right? As you all know, I am a champion of secular community. That's where I am willing to experiment at, and I'm willing to commit myself to it, win or lose, right? And so I'm wrestling with a lot of concepts that can be translated from church into secular community, and really re-looking at some of those concepts. And attendance was one of them, right? Because church attendance is a big thing. It's like attendance, connecting, tithing, and serving. These are like the big things of church. They're the acts of church, if you will. With attendance being the number one thing. But what I started realizing is that attendance is supposed to be for the benefit of the member, right? It's supposed to be, well, you come here, we're doing this because we call it a service. We're doing this as a service to you. And we often used to say that we're the hospital and we're here for you to come in when you need us. But then the message becomes, especially the closer you get drawn in, is you need us all the time. Like, just imagine what kind of hospital that would be. That would be like, hey, if you don't come here every week, we're going to shame you. You know what I'm saying? It's amazing to me how I never really saw how that's actually backwards as, I could say it, it's my channel. That's backwards as fuck. Because at this moment now, it's no longer really about my benefit. It's really at that moment about your ego. You need to see me in there so you can feel like I'm still following you and I'm still a part of what you're doing, as opposed to really being concerned and actually really being excited that David's enjoying his new wife,
Yeah. And just do you guys ever experience this? And sorry, Tom, to kind of to talk again, but did you guys ever experience this where someone was leaving the church and the pastor would get so offended, like they'll be going to another church and they'll be like, they didn't come to me and talk to me about this. It's like, they don't fucking need to, dog. Like,
you don't own them.
you know what I mean? Like, you don't. This isn't like a like. This is so weird. It's really weird. And also, aren't they part of the body of Christ as well? Like, I just don't understand. Yeah. Anyway, sorry.
Oh, that's beautiful, Tom. The floor is yours, man.
No, just to play off that, I was thinking about that while you guys were talking. Like, you think of like a book club or something. Let's say you don't show up for a couple weeks. The people there, they don't want you to show up to like shame you. They're like, hey, we're reading this cool stuff. I want to bounce this off of you because I like your presence, and you want to be there because you enjoyed the book. So
yeah,
the people want you to be there, and you want to be there, as opposed to just, oh, you weren't at book club. You didn't read Dune chapter 26 through 28. Very interesting. Like, no one's going to do that because they're there for the enjoyment of it and to have it with people.
I'm worried that you're not reading the book enough. Like, I'm getting worried about your book reading. Like, it's so.
Yeah, exactly.
It's bizarre, right? But then, like, that's actually an interpretation that's a game that I play often when people have a problem with something that I'm saying. I'm like imagining if I was critiquing any other book, if I was reviewing any other book, imagine someone saying, no, you're going to hell. Like, that's just like it's the weirdest thing ever. But the funny thing is, though, even when I was a believer, though, I thought that was weird. Some of the things that I see come out of the woodwork since I've started sharing content on YouTube is a type of Christian radicalism that I'd never seen before. I'd never seen the type of Christians who would just jump into conversations that they were not a part of and just start trying to bully everybody in the comments. That's a new thing for me. Have y'all seen that in your comments? This wasn't a planned question, but just curious.
Oh yeah.
Like Christian trolls?
Yes.
Yeah.
So many. And my channel is like 1/10 of the size of Dave's here. So like I've gotten from several different people. I've been called, whether indirectly or directly, as a derogative term, Jewish.
Wow.
Oh wow. That's
and
so
and like the first thing I'm like, it's okay. So it sounds like you don't have a point. It sounds like you're just saying you don't like me because of how I look. And he's like, yeah, what's wrong with being racist? I'm like, okay.
Yeah,
you're free to think that.
I am actually I said this with Brandon from on Deep Drinks, but I am flabbergasted. We're both flabbergasted at the way that some Christians act online. Like, I have no idea how you can consider yourself a Christian and be as provocative as you are. Like, even someone, I would say, who's generally I would say they're pretty committed to Jesus and stuff, and they're not that bad, but they're still like, is Cameron Bertuzzi from Capturing Christianity. But everything he tweets out is like a big, like, stirring the pot, like trying to get people pissed off. Like, by the way, beauty points to God. Like, it's just like, by the way, God, Christianity is true. Like, he says stuff like, even though that's not that bad, it's like, man, like, is this helping people come to Christ? No, it's not. It's like, it's causing divisionism. And whatever, if you want to do that, fine. Like, I'm aggressive on Twitter. I'm like sometimes a jerk. Sometimes, like, I say some dumb stuff, or I make hit piece videos. But I'm not pretending to be like the shining beacon of like the reflection of Christ in this world. I'm not trying to be the the come to me, all you who are heavy, and I'll give you rest. Like, I'm not trying to do that. You know what I mean? I'm just me.
Oh, I love that. Like, yeah,
my voice goes up an octave as I get more. I'm like,
that's gonna make me do another Family Guy reference. It's gonna take me there because Stewie does that.
Mama.
Yes. Oh man. Oh, I love this, and I'm gonna throw this back up here because I did love this, and I wanted to acknowledge it. Thank you so much for bringing community together here. This is beautiful, and that is what this is. This is community. And I want to give a major shout out to other people in the community who are doing it, because it's not just me. Everybody who's creating conversations around things that are not steeped in superstition are creating outlets for people to have conversations. So, to build community. So whether it's this, whether it's deep drinks, whether it's but consider this, whether it's the thinking atheists, whether it's skeptics and scoundrels, whether it's Stacy's mom's podcast, whether it's Crash Course or Star Talk. Our community is growing, and it is absolutely beautiful to me. I'm excited about it. Here's my last question in this particular section, and that is, how hard was it for you to leave? Was this a difficult decision? When you finally deconverted, for you to leave the faith and leave ministry and say, yep, I'm not doing this anymore, I'm done. Was this a hard decision? Was it a hard transition? Was it an easy decision, hard transition, hard decision, easy transition? Talk to me about it.
I'll go first, I guess, since I don't think I actually answered the second question. So I would say it was a pretty easy thing overall, because we had for anyone else that's like watched my deconstruction video, it was a two-pronged thing. So for my wife's and me as well, to a lesser degree, hers was more of the emotional thing. Like, these people don't act good. Like, these people act like assholes. They treat me like shit.
Yeah,
that's not like, I was agreeing with her at the same time while still being Christian. I'm like, oh, we just have to understand, and we just have to be better than them. We just have to, like, blah blah blah, put up with this bullshit. And from my perspective, like, as I was studying things, as I mentioned earlier, I'm like, I'm slowly realizing things, and I'm trying to keep it in the Christian category. I'm trying to be like, oh, well, maybe let me go to other stuff like the Book of Enoch. Let me go to other stuff like the Book of Jasher. Let me go to, all these like books, maybe that books where it used to be in the Bible but aren't now, or things that people like philosophers like used to like highly regard but aren't canon, and going to all that stuff. Yeah, and like trying to save it by going to those things, being like, okay, well, Jesus says, like, he says to, was it John or is it Peter, where he's like, one of you like will not taste death before, and he's like, oh, what about this guy? He's like, so what if I let him live until the coming of the Son of Man? And I'm like, so is he just walking around somewhere? Is he alive somewhere? Is he just? And then I looked, and like, there's a medieval tradition called like the Wandering Jew. They just believe that there's a dude walking around somewhere waiting for Jesus to come back. And I'm like, holy crap, that's obviously not true. And going from like that into so many other things, it just piled up to such a degree where it's like, not only do I not respect these people anymore because of how they act, how they treat me and my wife, and how I see them treat other people, take advantage of them, whether it be financially, whether it be just, oh, you're in the church, I'm the pastor, you have to do whatever I say whenever I want it. Yes. Come over and clean my house. Like, excuse me? Who do you think you are, honestly?
That was a real thing. That's how I know your pastor was black. That's how I know, because that is a real thing. Like, we thought it was an honor to wash the pastor's car. Like, and then like when I started hanging out with some of my white Christian friends, they were like, what?
That's what? I've never heard of that. Like, that's bizarre.
So like, I live with my sister and brother-in-law, and he'd be like, come go buy me groceries, like, come clean my house, come wash my dishes.
Yeah.
And like, literally, because I wasn't the one directly doing it, I'm like, that's kind of weird, but it's fine. And he's a kid, he needs something to do. But like, thinking about that from me doing that, I'm like, I would never do that. That would just make me feel like an absolute asshole if I did that.
Yeah.
So it was a combination of that, the way people are treating, and the like theological, like philosophical side, thinking like, this doesn't make sense. If I was to even continue to be Christian, it wouldn't be anything like this. It would be like a spiritual, esoteric, like hidden meaning in kind of things, whatever you're looking for, which I love talking about that kind of stuff. It's so fun. It's so interesting.
Yeah. I can get on board with that. Like, especially if like I was smoking a big doobie or something around a campfire and be like, man, do aliens exist? Like, even though weed makes me paranoid and I never smoke it, but like, that's the idea. Like, you're sitting there like, yeah, man, maybe aliens are real, or maybe Buddha was right.
I made God's image too.
That's amazing to me.
But yeah, that's
Oh,
the
man.
gist of it, and it was not difficult to leave once those came to a head.
Yeah, I can see that. There was something you said that really got my mind thinking, and it was just kind of hearing that transition. Of course, it was funny, just catching that similarity of like, yeah, because I really did like when I was coming up in ministry, that was the thing: wash the pastor's car, clean the pastor's house, whatever way you could be of service to the pastor. This is honor. Like it took one of my white Christian friends who was a part of the Vineyard movement when I was explaining a particular situation, and he was just like, "Hey, that kind of sounds like abuse." And then I was like, "Oh, you're right. That really does. I think I'm going to stop doing this now." But it was actually even worse than that. There are a lot of abuses, and as a black man, I'll never stop speaking to it. There are a lot of abuses in black churches, and I don't think that's restricted to just the states. I have a few friends on the continent of Africa, and I've heard some stories that are absolutely frightening. And so that is why I am very adamant, anti-superstition in all forms until we can get to a place where we can safely know the difference between our speculations and our reality. Because right now we still have parts of the world where people can be killed for identifying differently. And like, as human beings, we're on this planet together. I think we should be concerned about that, But anyway, I didn't mean to take that rabbit trail. David, we're gonna come over to you. How hard was it for you to leave, man?
Well, leaving church was easy, as mentioned, but deconstructing was incredibly hard, like painful, discouraging, scary, like all those words, but also at the same time, exciting, interesting, peculiar. I liken it to stepping onto an alien planet that feels very familiar, but not really, like where I had to like relearn everything, like relearn about just everything, fossils and science and like, oh, the Earth isn't 6,000 years old. Interesting. Like what?
Like,
so how long have we been here? Yeah, yeah.
You got to be born again.
yeah. And but what I would say is a huge catalyst for me in taking my deconstruction more seriously was one of my friends, first guest ever on Deep Drinks podcast, was closeted for 45 years. And, his close friends knew he was gay, but he'd never had a partner. He never had a relationship. And he was incredibly suicidal and depressed and said things to me like, what happens when my parents die? Do I just kill myself? And I was like, whoa. And, sorry to take things to a dark turn, but that's what he was saying. And so I thought to myself, like I need to look into this, like Bible stuff, like seriously, because remember, the Bible also says that women are not to cut their hair short. The New Testament says women are not to cut their hair short. They're to wear prayer scarves, which is that's why the Westboro Baptist Church still does that, and like a bunch of other churches. Yes. They wear the prayer scarves, and it's shameful for a man to have long hair. Like, this is the New Testament saying this, and we discarded that doctrine like whatever. What happens in like 100 years? Yeah, what happens in 100 years if like the church decides to discard? Not even 100 years. What happens in 10 years if the church decides to discard the teachings around homosexual relationships? And my friend has just wasted his life, and he's like incredibly, he just feels he'd be so hurt by that. So I thought to myself, look, I've got to really take this stuff seriously. I'm in a privileged position. I live in Australia, straight white male. Like, like I'm the typical. I got good health, like good job. Like I'm in a really good position of privilege. And you don't often realize the damage that certain belief systems do until you know someone who is experienced the downside of that. Like whether it's a friend who gets ostracized by the church because they divorced their partner, which happened, whether it's like a friend that's gay that feels like they can't be themselves. At the same time that was happening, I had another friend who was like a lesbian who just felt like really conflicted about their faith and their sexual identity. And you just look at this and go, whoa, like this is causing real harm to people. And I like these answers that they're not getting the answers they need. Like my friend had 10, 20 books on like pray the gay away, or, you know, dealing with being gay as a Christian, and like on his bookshelf. He did deliverance. He cried out to God over and over and over again, as like to the depths of his despair. He was going to die before he was going to, you know, to walk away from God, or to quote unquote live the homosexual lifestyle, which, by the way, was he wanted a relationship. He didn't want to like sleep around or anything. It wasn't a lust thing for him. He was just, I'm sure he liked dick or whatever, but like, but you know what I mean? But it wasn't like he just wanted to like go sin. He's like, I want a loving. Like, he's like, I want a partner. Yeah. He's like, I want a partner. It's funny, actually. I do remember talking to him once about, or discussing like sex stuff, and he's like, I just don't know what you do with boobs. I was like, he's like, do you just like push them out of the way? And I was like, no, man, you want to like get them in your face, and, you know, like
get all of them.
Yeah. And he's like, I just don't understand. Like, they're just kind of in the way. Sorry.
Oh my, yeah. That just. Oh, I think that threw me. But that was beautiful. Because that's really. I know that was a major part of it for me. Just wrestling with humanity and my theology. And my theology didn't align well with my ideas of humanity and what was humane. And so deconverting was actually very easy for me. That part was easy, actually leaving the community. I struggled with that for a few years, and, you know, trying to figure out who I'd be after that, and whether it was really shaking this idea that if I no longer had God, was I still a good person? You know, that was a hard thing for me to realize, and thinking that maybe I still needed to tether myself to the church for a while, to make sure that I at least stayed a good person. Because if I got too far away from the church, I wouldn't be a good person anymore. So, you know, it is very interesting. But interestingly enough, what did shake me out of silent atheism was realizing how much harm is being done. And it was like, okay, I can't be silent anymore. I have to actually be able to speak to some of this stuff, or it does just kind of get to continue. And I have seen a lot of lives damaged, you know, and I don't have any reason to pretend like I haven't. So let's shift to the second part of this conversation, which is, we've talked about leaving the church. The second part is, and I liked it. I'm curious. I'm curious, how has leaving church, religion, or superstition impacted your life? And what exactly did you like about it? What have you liked about leaving church? Inform the rest of us heathens and the believers who are out there looking like your life should be horrible after you left church. What is it that you actually liked about leaving church and leaving your belief system?
Go for it, Dave.
Okay. Well, I guess so. There's a lot of things. There's so many things, but the biggest thing is like the biggest thing that changed for me and that I liked is I got to think and use my brain to arrive at conclusions. So,
yes.
Like we've got a child. Atlas just turned 1 a few months ago, and it was like, whoa, like, what do we teach this child? Like, what, like, do you know what I mean? Like, if it, like, I said to Amy, like, this was one of the earlier episodes, but I said to Amy, I was like, okay, we got a kid in the future. This is when we first discovered that she was pregnant. We got a kid. This is an episode of Deep Drink, sorry. And I go, okay, he comes home and he's like, you know, he comes home and he's like, hi, this is Raul, my boyfriend. You know, like, what do you do? And Amy's like, hi, Raul, like, nice to meet you. Like, that's like, there's nothing, you know, like, I was like, okay. Your child comes home and is smoking a cigarette. What do you do? Oh, like, all of a sudden it's like, what is okay? What is not okay? That was really interesting. And thinking for yourself was really interesting. Is that, you know, looking at certain things and wondering if they're harmful, if they're moral, if they're not moral. That's been really interesting. Learning about the universe and science and everything. That's what I've really liked. What I haven't liked so much is, like, you lose a big chunk of community when you leave the church, and you lose a lot of friends. And I've despised that. But at the same time, the friendships that I did have so much more shallow than it seems. Like, if I was to continue them, because I can't engage with them on the same level. I can't be like, praying with them, or I can't engage in that deep level that I used to have because I no longer believe in the same kind of doctrine. And that's why, by the way, I want to compliment you, Darante, because you're a new channel, or newish, but like your content, the way you kind of present yourself is really serving a need in the community, which is you're creating community, and you can see it in your chat. Like your chat is really like they feel part of the family, and I think that's really good for the community of people who are either deconstructing or even believers who are just wanting to engage with atheists or whatever. Like you're creating a healthy environment for people to do that, which I think is important.
Thank you. See that you're always touching on those strings, and like I got to keep my eye over here because I will cry. So don't. but no, that does hit me in a lot of ways because I identify with that. Tom, what is that for you? How is it? What do you like? Like, how is this? What do you like about leaving church? What is there to like?
I think I've mentioned it a little bit before. Like you can saw, like I'm a small channel, and I already don't remember what I say. So like I don't know how like you or how any of us are going to a year from now. But I would say it's like where do you even begin with that? It kind of touches on what David said there, and it's like being free to like think and consider things. Like I don't have to look at like evolution and just avert my eyes. Like, oh, the word evolution, I can't look into that. I don't know what that is. Or like anything, like on any issue, like you mentioned with like a gay issue in the church. Like I can be like, I don't care. I don't care, or I support it, or I don't support it for this reason. I can, as he said, think about it myself and come to a reasonable conclusion on my own. And opening the door for everything from science to philosophy to like, because anything beforehand that like even like pangs at questioning God or his existence, or if religion is right, or if Christianity specifically is right, we would avoid. Like, I don't know about you guys, but I would avoid it. I would avert my eyes, literally not go near content, because that's cognitive dissonance there. You have to, if you want to get into that content, you have to put religion aside. And if you're willing to put religion aside in your mind, there's no reason not to keep it aside. To just leave
That's a
it
good
there.
point.
That is actually a very good point.
I remember reading. Yeah. Sorry.
You go ahead, David. No, you go ahead.
I was just gonna say. I remember reading Corey Taylor from Slipknot. He had a book come out called "A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to Heaven," and it was about all the paranormal stuff that he experienced. And I was reading it from the perspective of like I wanted to learn about what the secular world or what the non-Christian world was thinking of these quote unquote demons. But he goes on a little bit about God and like why God sucks a little bit in chunks of the book. And I remember reading it and going, ooh, I can't read, and putting this book down and thinking to myself, I'm not filling myself enough with the Spirit or with filling myself enough with Christian books or the Bible for me to be reading that. So I need to wait until, or I need to start reading other books like that build my faith up. There's that term, building your faith up. Yes. Before I touch this book again. And I put it on the shelf and never picked it up again. I might read it again, but it wasn't, I love Corey, but it wasn't my cup of tea. But still, like it's you got to protect your faith, right? You got to build it up. You can't be watching documentaries on evolution or yeah.
What's funny about that is I was watching a particular documentary on I think it was like the Discovery Channel one time. And it was about mermaids. And it was this documentary on the aquatic ape theory. And I was watching the whole thing through, and they had me. Like, I was like, holy crap, the government is like, has a conspiracy to hide mermaids. And then the end of it plays, and there's credits rolling, and I'm reading through the credits, and I'm like, wait a minute, there's credits. It says that this doctor is played by such and such. This person is played by such and such. And I'm like, holy crap. And that's when I realized how easy it is to believe something that's not true. And I don't know what it was about that thought, but I had never had that before. That realization that, oh, I am really gullible. Just like as a human being, I am really really gullible. And that, I think that did a lot of cracking. And I did want to just give some shout out here, because we have some amazing people in the chat. And Kalasia 789, you correct me if I'm not pronouncing that right. I'm not perfect, and I don't have any inclination to be so. So if I got it wrong, holler at your boy and let me know, and I will fix it. I promise you that. That's your money back guarantee. And then Golden Onyx Film, always appreciate you. That's just absolutely beautiful. Obviously, I'm just this type of guy where I'm gonna pull up everybody's chat. And it's not even because I'm just so loving. It's because I have elder eyes and I can't see unless they're on the big screen. And so I actually want to see what you're saying, just in case you're saying something really nasty about me. So, all of my positive things are kind of selfishly motivated, which brings me to my next question. And that is, how has leaving the church impacted your sense of morality? How do you manage to be a good person without a book telling you how to be good, or without God speaking in your heart, which nothing should be speaking in your heart, because your heart just pumps blood? But anyway, how has this impacted your sense of morality?
I guess I'll go. I just had a really interesting conversation with my friend. He's still a Christian, but the other day we were talking about. I asked him, like, do you think objective morality is a thing? And we went through it, and to my maybe not extreme surprise, but to my surprise, we agreed that there's no such thing as objective morality, because just look at human, like the way we talk, the way we move, the way our societies work. Obviously, morals change. And then we came to the idea, like, okay, so let's say there is a supreme being of some kind, and you are modeling your morals either after his or just doing what he says. That is you subjecting your morals to another being, which means it's not objective. So there is then no objective morals, which means, like, no one gets to claim they're right just because they think they are. No one gets to claim they're right just by authority. Like, imagine like a king like tells you, "Oh, go execute that guy. I'm the king. It's right to do." Like, what? No one would do that in this modern day and age, because our morals have advanced beyond that point.
Yeah.
And like we just said, like, you think about the issues, and if you don't know enough about it, it's okay to just be like, I don't really know, and I don't really care right now. Maybe later on I'll learn more about it and care, but right now I don't. So it's just understanding that it's a process, both for the individual and for the species as a whole. And we've come quite far as a species. And I'm like, if for any amount that I can be, I'm proud of that for the whole of humanity. And for myself, it's now just like, I'm actually responsible for things. I can't do something wrong and then be like, oh God, forgive me. Oh, I did this wrong. And it's responsibility, but also not being guilty for things that you don't believe anymore are immoral.
Yeah.
So that's what I would leave that.
I one of the things that I like that you said it a few times, is this idea that it's okay for me to say I don't care. And that was something for me that I did realize that was very disingenuous for a lot of believers, including myself, was that we allowed ourselves to have opinions about things that we didn't care enough about the research. We didn't care enough to actually, like, there's a lot of people who have opinions about who should be sleeping with who are not into sexual biology at all. Like that's not a thing for them, and it's just like that's really weird that you would allow yourself to have an opinion about something that in all actuality you don't really care about. This is not something that interests you. This is not something that you're reading books about.
The example I have recently, like, because again, I haven't thought about a lot of these issues. You used to just accept, here's the Christian viewpoint or here's the conservative viewpoint. This is what you believe. And thinking about, like, abortion is one of them. And I thought about it and actually considered it, like the pros and cons. Like, why should I care what someone else is doing with their body? Why do I care? Like, and you can think of all the reasons, like, oh, abortion should be allowed in this sense, but not in this sense. Like, I don't care. That's not me. That's not my kid. Why do I have any authority over what they do with their life? Even if you say, oh, it's a separate life and that you shouldn't, it's not my life. I don't know. Don't ask me.
Right. Yeah. I think that did start to weird me out at a point when I realized that a lot of people who had problems with abortion weren't signing up to adopt these kids. And, it's just like, like that's
You
an
don't care
issue.
about the kid. You care about your doctrine, your dogma.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So I personally don't like abortion, but I'd never outlaw it. I don't like it as in like I don't like the idea of animals dying for our food. So I mean, like,
absolutely
right. I don't like the idea of it, but I would never outlaw it. And I think it's we need to have it in part of society. But one thing that really bothers
McDonald
me,
gets canceled for wanting to outlaw
meat. but I'm also a hypocrite. So, but something that really bothers me is when people say that's when life begins. No, it didn't. Life does not begin at conception. It began 3.4 billion years ago. Like, at no point did a dead cell and a dead cell combine and poof, life created. A living cell merged with another living cell. Life was already there. Like, it's the only thing that you're actually, realistically, the only thing that you're actually doing is you're saying that that a unique person and a unique consciousness, which we don't know what that consciousness is, right? We don't have a, but we know that it probably develops around 16 to 24 weeks. So I think when someone dies, we can keep their body pumping blood forever. But are they there? No, we care about the subjective conscious experience. That's when we say that person is no longer with us, right? So to me, that's anyone, even if you're pro-life or whatever, anything before this 24, 16 weeks when the baby doesn't have, the fetus doesn't have any ability to be conscious. I don't get it. It seems weird. I've got family members who I said, you're at a burning hospital. You can save 2 petri dishes with fertilized embryos or a screaming toddler. And they say the 2 petri dishes. And I go, you're nuts. Anyway,
wow.
what was the initial question? Because I had something to talk about before I went on rant.
And that was beautiful. You almost had me speaking in tongues, by the way. But how has leaving the church impacted your sense of morality?
Oh, okay. So this is super interesting because yes. So this is something that really bothers a lot of Christians. Is morality is not a solved thing. There are different realms of morality, and I kind of I don't know where I kind of stand on it, but I kind of am almost a moral anti-realist. I just go I don't even know if morality exists. I think it's just something we create in our brain. But I tell you something that I find incredibly interesting for the folks who say object. Where do you get your morality from? Christians will say to atheists is when I had Dr. Josh Bowen on the channel. We're talking about slavery, and we bring up all verses in the Bible about slavery, just tons and tons and tons, where God Himself commanded slavery, not Moses. Yes. God said, and then God said, yada yada yada, take the virgin girls for yourself, things like that. And Josh said, well, if you get your morality from the Bible, you don't know that slavery is wrong. And I was like, yeah, how do you know if you get your morality from the Bible, if you don't have any there's no subjective edges of morality, you don't know that that slavery is wrong. But what do you see? You see all the apologists going, well, no, actually, the word slavery just means indentured servitude. It's just kind of like working at the supermarket and you have a contract for 7 years. No. Okay, so why are they saying that? The reason they're saying that is because it's subjective internal experience says, the ownership of another human being is probably wrong. So that therefore, the Bible can't be saying that. So it's frustrating because they're using their subjective intuition and then using that to retranslate what the Bible says. And then they say, where do atheists get their morality from? It's frustrating. So yes, where do I get my morality from? I don't know. But I start from the position that slavery is wrong. And I start from the position that hurting someone for your personal gain is wrong. I start from the position of women and men should probably be equal. You know what I mean? Things like that. I don't think that women should be quivering on the floor, subservient to men. I don't think one race is better than another race. These are places that I start from. I don't think if God does exist, that He'd have a favorite group of people and a favorite tribe, and He'd care so much about bloodlines. Oh, Joseph was the father of bloodlines. Who cares? You're the creator of the universe. So that's where
they're all your children. Why does it matter? You know?
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know where I've gotten all this like passion for. I don't know what was in the coffee this morning, but I've become like a bit of
I love it. You're preaching,
atheist.
man. This
Preaching.
is church. This is what, Thursday night. This is Thursday night small group or Bible study or midweek or whatever they're calling it nowadays. But no, that's absolutely gorgeous, and I think we all kind of agree on that, because I know for me, when I get faced with that question, I'm almost like, what do you mean? You know, it's almost like, I guess number one, because I am an atheist now, I no longer, and I don't even think when I was a believer, I never had the presupposition that morality came from God. I've read through the Bible quite a bit, and that's not even a claim that God necessarily makes. God doesn't make the claim that I am a moral God. You know, we kind of make these claims about God, but morality itself is absent from Scripture. That it's a, because as you said, it's kind of, if race is a social construct, morality is assuredly a social construct. And that was actually one of the things that definitely aided in my deconversion, is realizing that right and wrong changed from state to state, culture to culture, people to people, group to group. And it was not static, but dynamic. But then I realized, you know, I've raised 4 kids and I've watched my kids. You know, I didn't have to teach them necessarily right or wrong. I did, of course, you know, tried. But there are certain things I didn't have to teach them. I always give the story of my youngest daughter, because she went through a time where she was like an absolute terror to her older sister. And she used to like pinch her in the back seat and stuff, and like pinch her hard. And she's the baby. But eventually she realized, if I keep pinching my sister, and my sister's not going to want to play with me. My sister's not going to want to share her toys with me. When my sister has stuff, she's not going to want to let me get some of it. And eventually she modified her behavior in her own best interest, and said, you know, if I want to be able to get more from my sister. And I'm like, that's actually how we all do. I know I've made all of my decisions in my life based off of observing the reactions and responses I get from other people and the value that I put on those people. And so it is very interesting to me when people start with this assumption that morality has to come from God, because I'm like, wow, first you have to prove that there is one, and then you have to prove that he's moral, and then you have to prove that this God who gave us free will also gave us his morality. You know, that doesn't work at the same time. We can't get our morality from him and our free will from him at the same time. So I will go on. Yeah.
You talking about like how morality is kind of shifted. One of the things that I don't know how, well, it's probably common everywhere, but like one of the things people do on like bucks parties, or even bridal parties, whatever, is they'll go to strippers in Australia. Like that's like a thing. They'll go to strippers, and I hate strip clubs. I hate, like, it's so awkward to me. I hate it. I don't get lap dances. I sit there going going, this is so awkward, because I know, like, it feels like a bunch of salespeople just trying to sell me stuff, and and I just hate it, right? Like, I like titties or whatever, like, great. I like ass or whatever, ass and titties, but I just, the experience is not one for me. And it's so funny, because I was talking to Amy about this, and you know, at bucks parties or bachelor parties, there'll be drugs, alcohol, and strippers. And she said, isn't it weird that I don't have an issue with like strip clubs, but I have an issue with you doing drugs? And I was like, no, it's not weird, because strip clubs can't kill me. Like, I can take a drug, take the wrong drug, and die. Like, there's actual real harm there. A strip club, there's like, there might be some, like, you know, the people working there might not be in the best situation. There could be exploitation. You know, I could see, perv on someone or something. Like, there's some weird, like, subjective lines in there, but taking, like, snorting something up my nose, that could cause real physical, tangible harm. So I said, like, yeah, it makes total sense that you'd be more concerned about you know what I mean, like, me doing like hard drugs than, like, you know. So and I don't do hard drugs either, but you know, the point was, we were just having this conversation, like, yeah, it's weird that back in the day, when I was a Christian, I would have seen the strip club as more immoral, you know.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, and I agree. I don't People have always laughed at me, but I've never liked strip clubs. I think my wife thought it was a line when I first told it to her.
Yeah.
And it was like, no, it's not a thing for me. But I do like the way you brought that out, which kind of does segue to this next question, which I think is a good one. How has leaving the church impacted your relationships? And I want you to think about that across three spectrums: your relationship with your parents, your relationship with your partner, and your relationship with your progeny. Okay, I'm a fool for literacy and consonants. So your progeny is just children, but parents. How has it been with your parents? How has it been with your partner, your spouse, and how has it been with your children? How has this impacted your relationships?
Is it my turn?
Yeah, I don't know. I talk a lot, so you go. Tom, otherwise I'll just won't shut up.
I love it.
So as I mentioned earlier, I live with my grandparents. I haven't lived with my parents since I was like four-ish. I don't know. And I would say not a great deal. My grandfather's more of like I'll go to church when I like feel guilty or maybe when I have a health problem. Otherwise, probably not that interested. And my grandma's much more religious, but like it was, as with most, I think, like deconverted Christians, like I was the believer of the house. I was the one, like, no, we're before dinner, we're sitting down, we're having a Bible study, we're reading a chapter, we're praying, and then we're gonna eat. And like I had to drag my grandfather twice my age and make him do that. And now I feel like an asshole for doing that. Like, why did I force him to do this thing? But now I don't think I'll ever tell my grandmother. I don't think I will, simply because like she's very old, and it's like she clearly holds on to that, and she asks me like almost every time I call, like, "But do you still have the Bible study? How's the church going?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's great, Grandma. It's going."
You're like a different kind of Bible. You're like, "Yeah, I've got a new online Bible study. I can't, you wouldn't, it's a bit different."
Yeah. So I'm not going to take that away from her. There's no reason to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
That's very human of you. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I mean, even if it comes to like, oh, like I'd even do a Bible study with her. Like I won't go against that. With my wife, I would say not like it's like night and day or anything, but I would say it has definitely improved our relationship, especially from the aspect of we're equal. Like you don't have to do anything because of just who I am. I'm not king of the castle here. You do what you need to do, and you help me when I need it. I do what I need to do, and I help you when you need it. And that's it. We're just two people doing two things that have come together to share those things. And like, I don't know, maybe I think my wife's listening to it in the other room, but I don't know if I guess I would just say that we've come together so much more like complaining about this kind of stuff. Like, I guess gossiping. And now that I'm not Christian anymore, I'm like, what the hell is wrong with gossiping? I'm going to talk about whatever I want to talk about.
Love a gossip.
Wherever. That's what we're a social species. When a thing happens, we want to talk about it. What?
Yes.
Why are you telling us that's bad? I think that's literally like something that developed alongside religion to be like, don't point out this abuse. Don't point out what they're doing. Don't point out this stuff. Just keep your mouth shut. I'm like, no, thanks. I don't want to do that anymore. But we gossip about that stuff all the time, like our previous church, the things that people did, and like, did you see this idiot Christian TikTok? Look how cringe this guy is. I'm like, yeah, dude is cringe. And we share that kind of stuff, so that's fun. But yeah, I would say it's improved that relationship to a degree, and we get to have more fun. We don't have to be like, oh, we can't do this because we have church. Like there were times we had planned and we're ready to go on a vacation, like even like a weekend thing. Like, I guess we can't. We gotta go to church. I'm the pastor. I guess I can just do this forever now. And so we can actually do things. We can choose when we want to do things, where we want to do things, etc. Don't have any kids yet, but hopefully not in the too distant future. But yeah, that's what I got.
Awesome. I love it. David, what about you, man?
Oh, it's actually something I haven't considered a whole lot, but I will say that it was very hard for a long time with especially my wife's family. We were kind of in the closet atheists for a long time, where they would bring up like certain things and we would kind of have to smile and nod and things like that. So it was quite hard for a long time with the family. my family's been pretty. I mean, I think if anything, my family were like, "Oh God, thank God, Dave's calmed down a little bit." About but I guess in far as our relationship goes, it's been. I'll try not to just say the same thing because it's definitely been like great in so many ways, but it also brings into question things like morality around relationships, like what's okay, what's not okay. So there's a lot of it becomes more work in one way because you have to, and I haven't thought about this so too much, so I could be I'm just talking on my ass a little bit, but it becomes more work in that you have to consider things like, we never had a relationship where I'm the man of the house and blah, 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 like, or anything like that. It was always very cooperative. But when things get tough, especially when you have a kid, being able to fall back on something like that, like where it's like people know their like lines, would kind of be nice, but we have to think about things like, so, I'm not the stern father. I have to come into the relationship with our son Atlas, and I have to be compassionate. But then I also have to, if mum sets rules, I have to follow the same rules because otherwise we're teaching him, different things. Or if I set rules, she's got to follow. Like, so it becomes a bit more complicated. But in that, I think we become better people. I think that it's kind of like axe grinding an axe. Like you have to learn about yourself and things. I'll give a good example of something. My language as an Australian, but also as someone who engages in these kind of conversations, but is I've used things like I used the word pussy as a derogatory, and I had pastor turned porn star Nicole, like after the video, pull me up and go, "Hey, that's probably not like that. Don't. It's not a good idea for you to use that." I'm like, "Oh yeah, actually that totally makes sense because we were on a panel about purity culture, and I'm calling someone a pussy because and I was okay, so that's something I want. So that's something that I was like, yeah, that's actually something I should change. That's like and then just recently, we're talking about in a private chat. I was talking about Sentinel Apologetics, who was calling Dan McClellan and Dr. Dan and Dr. Kip a simp for liking Dr. Francesca Stavrakopoulos' work. And I responded in the chat, what a C word. And the C word in Australia is just like really common. But again, same situation. Dr. Jen pulled me aside and was like, "Hey, look, maybe just reconsider using that word." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, actually, that's a really good that's a really good point. This is something I don't like as an Australian. It's like we say it all the time. But and even though I was kind of saying it in a way that was like sticking up for because these people being misogynistic in this thread, I was doing it in a way that wasn't super helpful. So things like that becomes. It's always a learning experience, I guess, morality and learning, I guess, what is the reasons behind everything. So to answer your question in a long-winded way, relationships have become more interesting, but more work, but also I think as a result we become better, and we're iron sharpens iron, grinding, getting better at becoming better people, I think.
I absolutely love that. I love what both of you said. I know for me, that was one of the things that I let go of after I deconverted, and was that I no longer needed the world to be easy. I no longer needed 5 steps to understand women, or 5 steps to be the best dad. It really became clear to me that life is a whole bunch of moving variables. And that if I expect to engage things, in good faith, I would have to be intentional about engaging those things, and I would have to kind of always be on it. I know y'all can't see all of these behind me, but I actually have these behind. Do the work, do it right, do your best, do the most.
Yeah,
and that's kind of one of the things that I really do live by, and in my relationships with others. And so I know it's as far as my relationships with my parents. It just helped me see them for who they were and be okay with it, and realize that hey, I'm not missing anything. I'm good. For my wife, I think, and I'll let her speak to it, but I think it made me a better husband, but maybe it made me somewhat of a harder husband, because there is this idea, I think the husband that my wife has, a lot of other women in our community would not want, because I don't like. There literally are no gender roles, in our house at all, and it's and one of the things that I realized with my community here is that there are a lot of women who have been so taught that you are less than and that you need a man to lead you that some don't even feel comfortable thinking on their own. It's like, that's going against God. So I was very grateful that my wife was okay with that, because I was like, no, I wouldn't even trust another person to just lead me like that. We're going to have to be partners here and figure this out together. But I do love that. Last question in this section. What's the difference?
Well, can I, sorry to interject, but this is such a good point by Golden Onyx Film. Golden Onyx Film said, yes, I thought I was the only one. I thought faith was morality, although I had no idea what faith was. So I just wanted to touch on that, because a big part of my deconstruction was realizing that faith was actually immoral. Like faith in regards to like hope, great. Faith in regards to, I believe in something. This is something I get behind. Fine, whatever. But when it comes to investigating something and just throwing your hands up in the air and ignoring the evidence and saying, I have faith in Jesus Christ, or I have faith in the Bible, when we can look at the manuscripts that the Bible came from and we can see the contradictions, we can see the errors, we can see where science is conflicting with what the Bible teaches. And faith in that instance, for me, I realized was immoral. I realized I was being dishonest. I realized I was going, I was lying to myself and to the rest of the world if I was to just look under that rug, see the evidence and go, nope, I don't believe it. And that was a huge thing for me when it came to morality, is I realized that it was lazy and it was dishonest.
That's an incredibly good point. Thank you for calling that out, because that is one of the things that's why I stopped pastoring, because I realized, like, oh no, for me to continue to do this is being dishonest. For me to continue to say like that's what was scary for me, is realizing that I had a lot of pastor mentors who had churches where they lead thousands of people, and you're not even certain that what you're telling them is true. And that was like, oh no, that's not right. You're not supposed to do that. And so I think that's a great point. Great point. Last question in this section. What's the biggest difference between who you are now and who you were before deconversion?
Is that one you, Dave?
Oh yeah, it's weird because I end and then I guess the difference between hugely not super, I really fight hard against superstition and like certain like thought processes that I would have. Like I used to have, everything from, if I see a red car going around the corner, that means X. Like and that was just a fun game, but it's like. But so I would, look into coincidences and try and work out what was going on. Intuition, definitely, like, this doesn't feel right. So a great example of this is we had, and this probably isn't good advice, but we were putting we were renting a room at our house, and there's one person that we looked at, he just didn't feel right, but everything on paper looked fine.
Yeah.
And we were like, oof, like normally we would say, like as Christians, we would say, just something doesn't feel right. But we're like, no, like we're going to let him in or whatever. And he ended up being great. Like he ended up being like amazing. Like he paid for a bond cleaner to come in and clean his room when he left. He was a little messy, and he was a little bit of a stoner, and like would leave his, like, he would eat yogurt and then like accidentally touch the cupboard when he was getting something, whatever. But besides that, he was actually great. Like we just never saw him. He worked all the time and he was in his room. Like, so that's an example of like where I instead of listening to internal gut feelings, I try and look at the data. I try and look at the evidence when it comes to everything. I don't hear a horrible story about vaccines and go, ooh, maybe vaccine. I go, okay, what does the data say? What does the analysis say? Oh, there's a big conspiracy in the government and everyone's trying to kill us. Okay, let's look into that. Like, can we rationally conclude that from the evidence? And And that's been the biggest thing for me, is becoming more interested in truth and pursuing it, with which again is hard. Everything is, you know what, becoming an atheist is hard. Like, all of a sudden when you got to start thinking for yourself, you got to start, you know, it becomes hard, but rewarding at the same time. So yeah, I think I became more considered and more I wanted objective, analytical evidence to conclude things rather than to just go with gut feels.
I like that. I often tell people now that emotions are for the experience, data is for the decisions. You know, feel the emotions, have the experience, but do not make the decision based off of that emotional impulse. You always tie the decision to the data. Because I know for me, you know, I've shared with many people my weight loss journey. A part of that major decision was like realizing, like, oh, like I literally eat for no reason. Like, I not just like, you know, oh, give me that, I want to eat it, but like I literally had no reason attached to me eating. It was just, hey, food's here, it's time to eat, let's eat. And there was a whole bunch of other stuff tied to it. And it wasn't just food. I realized almost everything that I did in my life, I wasn't attaching reason to. I wasn't saying I need to know why. It was all really feeling based, really five senses based, you know, and intuition based. Tom, what has it been like for you, man? What's the biggest difference between who you are now and who you were before deconversion?
All right, I'll try to be quick because the dogs are barking in the background. The biggest difference, I would say, is that, I think I touched on it a little bit earlier, is that, again, there's the side of there being no excuses anymore for I can't just ask for forgiveness. I can't just pray and things are then okay. And also it being okay to make mistakes, it being okay to like, or to things that aren't sinful anymore, things that aren't actually sin, things that are normal for human beings to do, whether that's drinking, whether that's sexual stuff, whatever it may be. And understanding like, oh, I'm a human being. These are okay. This is literally 100% the way human beings act. I don't have to feel guilty about certain things.
Yeah.
And just the dichotomy between those two things, like so many more things becoming, well, what's the Christian term, like adiaphora or whatever. What is it that's like the term, like it's not mentioned in the Bible, so like nobody knows what you're supposed to do about it. I forget what the actual term is, but like so many more things becoming available for you to do, to try, but also way more responsibility compared to what you had before, because there's no one, you're not accountable to anyone anymore except you are the one that is doing the thing. There's no big guy you can ask, forgive me, etc. But I'll leave it there because the dogs are going crazy.
I love it. And honestly, the dogs weren't too bad. I absolutely love it. Sometimes when my wife comes in when I'm recording, she tries to be really considerate and she'll try to sneak around. And I'm like, hey, babe, this is your house and they know we're at home. So it is absolutely okay. This is not a staged production. So, which is probably a big difference between me now and who I was before as a pastor, because everything had to be absolutely perfect. But I can definitely identify with both of you said, especially that mistakes thing. Like I actually just did a video about that today. I was terrified of making mistakes. That meant I was doing something wrong. That meant I had displeased God. But I think like one of the most freeing things, one of the most beautiful things about me now, as opposed to me before, is I just take responsibility for anything that happens in my life. I literally live in a place that some people may call extreme responsibility. It's just a place where I am not, I don't live in blame anymore. You know, like I know a long time that there was just a lot of blame. This person did this to me. This person is the reason I can't do this or I can't do this. And it was like coming out of this superstitious shell, the most powerful thing I ever learned is that I was the problem, even when it wasn't my fault. And I know that's not something for everybody. Like I went through a really hard time. Well, I had a bunch of bad mentors, but my last one like screwed me over financially in just a horrible way. And it was a beautiful lesson for me. It was a beautiful lesson because I was an atheist when I was going through this experience. And I remember I went home and I told my wife and I said, hey, this is his fault, but it's my responsibility to fix. So I'm going to resign. And I'm gonna stop. Well, I'm still gonna stop working for people who have an imaginary friend that can change their mind at any given time. So I'm not gonna do that anymore. Probably
Isn't
wasn't
that
the best. Go ahead. Yes.
I heard this somewhere. I don't know how true it is, but is it true that George Bush, he was like, "Oh, I prayed, and he like, and God told me to like invade the Middle East or something." Like he was like, "That's wild to me." Like the president's just like, God told me. Like that is not only is that like poor decision making in my mind, it's also very damaging to say that publicly. It's very much an us versus them, from a lot of Christians' perspective. Then, you know what I mean?
My goodness. Yes.
I don't know if it was him or some of the advisors, but I recall reading something about it, and again, take this with a grain of salt, but that they literally believed it was like bringing about the end times. It was going to like start the domino to like Armageddon or whatever.
That's happening at the moment with Israel and all this, and Palestine. Everyone's like, this is like Christians are celebrating in a lot of ways that like this is the end. This is happening.
The will of the Lord. Pray for the peace of Israel. Like it's an entire movement. I think I remember Dutch Sheets, as far as over here, was really big on that back in the day. And I remember that was some stuff, and that was probably back in the 2000 I don't know, 2012 or something. It had to be around the Obama election because that brought out a lot of ugliness in some of my friends. But so it was 2008. There it is. So I remember like there was a lot of things when Barack Obama was running for president that he's going to be anti-Israel, so therefore he's going to be anti-God, and I was like, hold up, is this man running to be bishop or president? So like, what is going on here? I remember
was it 4th or 5th grade? I don't know if I got this from the news or my grandparents' views from them hearing on the news, but more than a handful of people literally believed that Obama would be the Antichrist.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Like a lot.
Yes.
Yeah.
I remember thinking that as like a 4th grader who should have no concept of any of that stuff.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. I remember being actually worried about that, hearing about like, maybe Obama's like Antichrist or whatever. I didn't know anything about politics, especially American politics at the time. And someone pointed out like, yeah, but like if you were living in like the 30s or 40s or whenever like World War II was happening, you would definitely be like, Hitler is the Antichrist. Like, well, and I was like, true. And I was like, Hitler is very much more the Antichrist than Obama. And so I was just like, okay, so if Hitler wasn't the Antichrist, Obama probably isn't the Antichrist. I was like, so like just, and this is when I was a Christian. So I was like, all right, so that's all good. Like,
that's hilarious. All right, so this brings us to our final segment of the evening, and I think it may be morning for you gentlemen. Is that correct? Like early morning?
Yeah, 8:30 a.m. here.
Oh wow!
Wait, where are you, Tom? Where are you?
I'm in the Philippines currently.
Oh, cool. I've got some friends there.
It's an international conversation. I love it.
Yeah, I thought you guys were both in America. Oh, right.
No. We are all over the place. What time is it where you are, David?
10:30, and my boss is Veto Media in the chat, and I said to him, "I'm actually working right now at Veto Media." So,
oh, that is beautiful. That is beautiful. I hope we're not getting you in trouble.
No. That's part of the reason I took this job is it allowed me the ability to do live streams and then just work extra hours. So work earlier or later. Awesome. Yeah, he's a great guy too.
That was one thing I enjoyed about. I don't know if y'all are familiar with the CEO of Netflix, but it was Reed Hastings. I had to do a report on him in college, and one of the things I found fascinating about his work culture was that he said, "I only hire adults." And so because of that, they don't have lunch, they don't have breakfast or bathroom breaks or anything. You have a job to do and you do it on whatever schedule you think meets best for you. If you need to take a break, you take a break. If you want to go somewhere, you know how to get your job done, and we trust that you're going to get your job done. And I love that.
That's
like to see more companies do that. Which the company that I work for on my 9 to 5, they're kind of like that too. But we do work a lot. But anyway, this last segment is, but was it worth it? So here's my first question in this. What have been the negative impacts of leaving church, if any? Like, did you lose anything? I know, and we'll kind of combine this question because I know both of you already mentioned this aspect of community. Is community really the primary thing you miss, or is there anything else? Do you miss that belief system? Do you miss believing in heaven? Do you miss hoping in an afterlife. Was any of that important for you, or was it really more so the community and those relationships that helps to sustain the positive relationship with the church?
Is it me or Tom? Tom.
All right, I'll go. I'm not remembering any better than you are anyway. So, the first thing that came to my mind actually is I miss being like special. I miss like thinking I'm the special little boy who God has a special plan for me, and I'm gonna go like. I gotta prophesied to me that like, oh, I'm gonna be like a big like evangelist preacher in like China, and I'm gonna open China for whatever, blah blah blah. And like
Yes.
also like abusive. Now that I think of it, the same person also prophesied my wife would die in China. So fuck you.
Wow.
But
Okay.
yeah,
That just went
yeah.
dark.
So that immediately for me was like, why the hell would I ever go there then?
God.
Yeah.
Why would I do that?
Wasn't
wow.
that like a major plot in Peele's Lovecraft Country? Like that? Wow, that's yikes. Oh
Whoa.
man.
But yeah,
How good though that your wife doesn't have to die now. Like,
yeah, it's
was that in all seriousness, was that a relief? Like, oh, maybe my wife's not going to die in China.
yeah, and it's the problem is like things play into that. So my wife will have a bad dream, like, oh, I dreamed like this bad stuff was happening, and I got killed, and I'm like, oh, this is just God confirming that she's gonna die, and
Oh yeah.
Wow.
So like, yeah, now that once you're out of there, you're like, oh, none of that matters. That's all just people saying things, and then you thinking and dreaming things because you believe that thing.
Yep.
And
it's funny that you mentioned dreaming, because then like coming out of it, it's like, oh, it was all a bad dream. Like none of this is real. Oh, I feel so much better now.
It was nice on that side, but
yes.
What I do miss is like thinking like you are legitimately special, like you legit like God has a special thing for you and you only, and like you're a king. All this crazy awesome stuff, and it's gonna be the end time. You're gonna be like a leader in the end times. Like it's an appeal to power is basically what it is. You want to be special. You want to be bigger than your brothers and sisters. You want to be, because that's at least in our church. I don't know about the black church.
Yes.
It's competition to the extreme. Everyone wants to be better. Everyone wants to have the best prophecy given. Everyone wants to have the most authority, the person everyone looks to know whatever. And it's like so much competition. So I guess I miss to a degree that aspect of like, I'm special in a way that I didn't do anything about. Yeah. I'm special in a way that, God made me to do whatever. Otherwise, like, as you said, the community, I'm a pretty, I wouldn't say private person, but like, I like my me time. I don't like, I play games online with my friend who's in the US. We do that like probably every other day for a couple hours. Like between that, my wife and my brother and sisters-in-law, like that's enough for me. I don't need too much more. And this is more than enough for me. So in terms of the community aspect, that's good too. I can't think of any other thing that I particularly miss. I guess just miss also the philosophy, the thinking, like it goes back to thinking I'm special again, because like, oh, I understand these deep things about God. Like, oh, you say you're a Christian, but you haven't even read all these other things. You don't even know the Gospel of Thomas says this. You don't know the Book of Enoch says this. You don't know these things. Like, whatever. Who do you think you are? Like, I'm better than you. And it's like you look back, and so much of it is just like posturing. You trying to posture yourself above your people that you're supposed to be equal with and share everything with and love unconditionally, but no one really does any of that.
That is actually wild for me, because that was actually a part of my conversion story, was that idea of being special, that God has made me special. I don't know why now I hear it in this 30 Rock meme where this one character says, I'm your fancy little boy. You just feel like God's special special kid. But you are absolutely right, and that is something that I am going to wrestle with now in my mind a little bit, because I know that got me in, and I wonder now, do I miss that? And because I remember at one point, my goal was to be a father of fathers and a leader of leaders. I was so attached to that idea that I wanted that on my epitaph, on my grave. here lies a father, and a leader of leaders. And now, after just hearing you say that, I'm like, huh. I wonder, was that my way of saying here lies the best father out of all of them and the best leader out of all of them? Because that definitely does have that kind of competitive aspect to it. That was a really great call out. Thank you for that, Tom.
Yeah, just a
David,
little
man.
aside. On my channel, I say like our previous pastor, which for all intents and purposes, to a normal person would be an absolute whack job, just a complete whack job. And I look at those type of people now that think they are like the prophet, they have the truth, they have the whatever. And I'm like, I've coined the term special boy syndrome. Like, you think you are the special boy. You're the special little boy.
Do you know who has the biggest special boy syndrome? Greg Locke. Isn't he just the biggest special boy syndrome? Like, whoa. So for me, there are things that I miss for sure, but like bouncing off what you guys were saying about feeling special. I remember, 3 weeks into being a born again Christian, and all of us at a youth group, and I'm running around painting the blood of Jesus on the walls, metaphorically in his prayer, where people were on mattresses on the floor. It was very, things were going on. And some lady points to me, some youth points to me and says, "You're going to do big things." And I still remember that. I'm like, yeah, I am. Like, but it wasn't like an ego thing then. Well, I guess it was, but I was like, whoa, It was a humbling moment. But the more and more I invested into the church, the more and more these visions of grandeur would come to me, and it would be very humbling. But then I look back at it now, I'm like, man, I'm a bit egocentric. But what I would say about the things that I miss is I miss community a little bit. I miss being able to go to a church, usually if it's the right church, and if I play the game, if I walk in there and I'm like, I can hug the person at the door, welcome, I sit down, people want to come up and talk to you. I miss the warmth of sitting down with a bunch of believers who we're all on the same page, and we're just like, let's read the Bible together, and we read it and we try to interpret and understand, having that ritual, those rituals that you don't necessarily have. Like, I'm not going to sit there and read God Is Not Great by Christopher Hitchens with some folks, but in a way, Deep Drinks has become a little bit of that ritual, and these conversations have become a little bit more of that ritual. It's like I'm connecting with people like I used to, but not having to carry the baggage of those religious ideologies. And one thing I will say is a lot of the time when you leave church, it's like it's like leaving your shackles. There's a lot of religious baggage that you leave, and we've discussed it a lot through this episode. But one of the things I noticed is when people, a lot of the time when someone's been brought up in church or their whole life has been about church, and then they leave, like they quote unquote go off the rails and they go quote unquote clubbing, or they hook up with people or whatever it is, usually young adults or something, they will return to church quite quickly. It becomes like the story of the prodigal son. It's like they came back. They were, and I realized the reason this is because they have no idea. They aren't equipped with the tools necessary to deal with reality on reality's terms. Yep. They all of a sudden they hook up with someone. Maybe they have a pregnancy scare. Maybe they feel really emotional about hooking up with someone. Maybe they get drunk and they're hungover. They feel guilty. Yep. What do you do when you're guilty? You turn to God. What do you do when you're worried? You turn to God. You can't do that if you're off the rails. And so all of a sudden your support network, your psyche is just gone. And yes. it becomes really, and that's why I think you see people who like leave the church and they go nuts. Like they're going all over the place with like, I'm doing drugs now, or now I'm hanging out with criminals. And it's like, whoa, like, okay, like, all right. Like, so I think that a big part is like having of what I miss, I guess, is that ignorance of just every time I'm anxious when I'm driving the car, I can pray and then my anxiety will leave because I'm just like, God's got me, like covered by the blood, I'm protected. And now realizing, that you're not is actually one last quick story. Yeah, I think I told you, it might have been the episode on Stacey's mom's podcast, Darante, that you were on, but or maybe not. But I had a really bad accident in the surf. I was trying to spearfish essentially, And when I didn't have my speaker on, I was just practicing, but it was the biggest swell that would ever have. I don't know why I went out, but it got to the point where I was going to drown. Like I sat there trying to keep my head above water, and I thought to myself, like, what are my chances of actually getting out of this, like, rationally? And I thought, there's a greater chance of me dying now than there is me living, and no one was coming for me, kind of thing. So what I opted to do was to swim into the rocks to get out of the situation, and I just got minced up, and I got out of the situation. I just covered my head, but I was just, like, covered in blood and, like, just gashes everywhere. And I remember thinking to myself, I better pray and get myself right with God. And then I thought to myself, wait a minute, I don't believe in God. And I was like, oh no, I'm on my own. Like, and the realization that no one was coming to rescue me, and I got myself in this tricky situation, that was horrible. That was, like, really horrible. And, you know, like, people say atheists will convert on their deathbed because, you know, you can't pretend that you believe something that you don't believe. I don't choose to not believe, because it's not a choice. I don't go like, oh, like, I don't like religion so much. It's like I'm just not convinced of it. You know what I mean? Like, I could be convinced. Convince me, someone, please. Like, I'd love to know the truth. So, but yeah, so that's what I've missed. Long-winded.
Have you ever prayed to the wave gods for bigger waves, David?
No, I'm not a surfer. It was I was trying to learn how to spearfish, but it's so silly because, like, when I got there, all you could see was like a sea of white. I didn't have my glasses on, but it was like the biggest swell we'd had in like a year and a half. And when I was getting in, I had my goggles on and I was putting my fins on, which my fins were like this, like almost a meter long. And my goggles got washed away, and then I couldn't find the snorkel bit. So I'm going out there with just this bit and my fin. So I'm like, and I'm like, and then all of a sudden I'm like, I got swept right in front of, like, the rocks, and, like, waves are coming this way, and this way, and I'm just, like, in this washing machine, like, I'm gonna drown, and, like, it was bad. But yeah.
Yeah, that absolutely sounds terrifying. I know just a thought that came to my mind in my old days, I would just be like, "Oh, David, that's some white people stuff." But now, which is interesting because I've realized that in a lot of ways in my community, we do condition a lot of our kids to be afraid of new things, and to be afraid of trying things, to be afraid of experiencing the world around them. Again, that's some of the things that led to my deconversion, is realizing that I was a stranger in a world around me that was absolutely knowable. I was treating the world around me as if it was unknowable because God was unknowable. And I'm like, well, the world is knowable. I can, you know, possibly not with the precision that I like to know it in, but I can know more things about the world around me, and I don't have to be afraid of trying new things. And I remember having conversations with people in other cultures and hearing about some of the things they had done and tried and experienced. And I'm like, oh, I haven't done any of that. The most dangerous thing I've done is just walking down the street, which was pretty dangerous. Like the house we lived in before this one, like
probably considerably more.
Yeah, like we were gonna buy the house we were in because it was like a great deal. But like 2 bodies ended up, like dead bodies, you know, ended up showing up 1 week, and then like 3 weeks later there was another dead body. And then, like, I think like 2 years before that, our house had just got shot up randomly. So, you know, that was all the danger we needed.
Yeah. That's so funny because, like, that's so, there's so many things that like people will be afraid of flying, but it's like you're much more likely to die on the way to the airport in your car, like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
What you don't want to be on a plane with me. I was traveling to a church trip one time, and my assistant was with me, and I had the window seat, and we were just sitting there looking out. And you know, I think weird things, and I have a pastor friend who lost his parents on a plane crash, and that's actually how he became the pastor of his church. And so I'm in the plane, and I said, you know, we're sitting there. This was our first plane ride, and I'm like, you know, hey, Pastor 83 lost both of his parents on a plane ride. You know, like I wonder if they were looking out the window when it happened. And so, I didn't mean to freak her out, but she's like, I'm never going on a plane with Pastor ever again. His faith, I guess, is just too strong because he talks about stuff you're not supposed to talk about. Not when you're in the air.
I do remember being anxious once, and my brother-in-law is like, I'm like, trying to like calm down on the plane and stuff. And I'm telling everyone, I told everyone, like, don't, like, I'm really anxious. Don't like mess with me. And he's like showing me stuff. He's like, do you know why they put you in these positions? So your neck breaks when you hit the, I'm like, dude, just stop. Like, can you just stop? Like with the analysis of like plane crashes right now? Like, yeah.
I love it. I love it. Here's our last question for tonight. Was it something that would have been helpful for you when you made your decision? Is there anything that could have been in place for you that could have made it easier, or even could have accelerated that decision for you? Like maybe when you first started thinking, is there anything that could have been in place that could have been like, oh, okay, this is so much easy. I can kind of skip some of the heartache, or at least I can have something in place of that. Anything that come to your mind? And I do understand that this is somewhat of a speculative question.
Me again.
Sure.
Tom, do you have anything? I'm still thinking.
I'll cover it for you. I forgot the question. Anything that would have made it like quicker or better? Okay. I think back and like, though it was quick for me, like I think if you're an honest person, once you start getting into like justifying your religion with like conspiracy theories and stuff like that, you're pretty close to getting out of that religion.
Yeah.
You say that, but Kent Hovind like has been doing that for like.
Oh, that's a good point.
If you're an honest person, I don't know if I put the stipulation on it.
Yeah.
So I just feel bad a little bit, especially for my wife, seeing the way like she was treated sometimes, like treated as like less than, almost like a servant sometimes. And it's like, I should have seen the emotional side of it first. I shouldn't have been so focused on like the doctrine and like the right belief, or like, oh, the secret wisdom, this gnosis, or that I'm going to get. And like, I should have seen the emotional side first. And I think that would have gotten us both out quicker. Now, since I came here, I think it was almost 2 years. So like I got in evangelical, became very serious, and got out pretty quickly. But I wish it was a little bit quicker than that. But at the same time, I don't think I would have learned all the things I learned about, whether it be psychology of like religion, or like all the philosophy, all the ways people try to because people will come to my videos and try to be like, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. Like, no, dude, I know exactly what I'm talking about. You quote verses and they don't even know what the hell you're talking about. And then like all the things on top of the Bible that I've studied, whether the philosophy, all these other books. And it's like, no, I don't. I know. That's why I'm out. But I digress. I think that would be the biggest thing.
That's good. And I think something that people assume about people like us is that we never tried. Is, which only shows you that they haven't even listened, which I don't pay those type of people much attention anyway. But the assumption is just that, like, yeah, you were this lazy Christian, and then one day you just got tired of trying, as opposed to realizing that, no, there are many of us who took the absolute opposite route. We were people who were trying to do our best to know God. We were trying to do our best to please God. We were trying to do our best to understand his ways, to fulfill his plan and walk in his glory. And then we got to the end of that and realized it was just us working. He wasn't helping us in this endeavor in any way. And so thank you for that. David, have you had enough time to kind of chew on this?
Because I had a lot of thoughts before. They're just very scattered. But what I will say is that the thing for me that was the hardest was realizing that I was going down this like path. It was the emotional cost. So going down this path that I couldn't go down with my Christian friends and family. So trying to engage with them and getting excuses and lies and deliberate deception and things like that. It was incredibly hard. So I guess what I would say is my goal was, if someone is deconstructing, first of all, I don't care if you deconstruct and you become a stronger Christian or whatever, or you pull apart. I don't care. Like, do whatever you like. First off, my hats off to you for taking the journey to investigate what you believe and why. I don't care if you become a Christian, atheist. Doesn't worry me. But what I will say is that process can be really hard. And one, be gentle with yourself. Like, it's not the end of the world. Like, try to enjoy the process in between, because I don't know, I might be a shaved head, orange robed monk in 10 years, and then I would have looked back at all this and gone, oh, just try to enjoy it. Try to enjoy life in the process, because that's the only thing we definitely know we get, right? And that's not even guaranteed. For, things can happen. So be kind to yourself, and also just acknowledge the fact that I like what one of you said, that you're seeking God. That's what I was doing in my deconstruction. I was trying to seek God, but for me, part of that was truth. I was trying to seek truth, and I'm still doing that to this day. So I'm still in the process of I'm a man after God's own heart. I'm a man after God. Like, I'm a man after truth. But I just discovered that I didn't have good enough reason to warrant belief anymore. And just know that the Christians in your life, or the Muslims in your life, or whoever, what religion you're deconstructing from, or belief system, is they might not be able to take that journey with you, and just accept that. You almost have to, this is going to sound really, really like egocentric, but you almost have to go like, I'm better than them, because like you think, oh, well, this is rational, I'll be able to have a conversation. No, you can't. They're just not at that spot, and you weren't at that spot one time. So you just have to accept that they can't. Don't push these conversations onto people that aren't ready to have them, and just be just be open and honest with yourself, and go, okay, let's investigate things, and let's try and like follow the evidence where it leads. So that would be my advice, and that would have helped me a lot to realize that a lot of my Christian friends and family, even though we both say we're after God, we're after truth, where we want to know that we have the truth, we want to know the truth, is sometimes you're just not compatible. Like, and you just have to accept that, and that's totally fine. And doesn't mean that I'm right and they're wrong, by the way. It just means that,
right.
Yeah, like, it's not like I've got all the answers. It's not that at all. It's just that when you're investigating whether or not there is a God, that's a very different question to what does God want for my life, or the will of God, or what, it's a very different. It's 2 steps back, and maybe they're not ready to go 2 steps back.
Yep.
So
yep. I think a lot of one of the biggest misconceptions about atheism is that atheism is a claim to have all the answers. And in truth, nothing could be further from the truth. Atheism is literally the freedom to separate from pretending to have an answer that you do not have anymore. It's realizing that, no, I don't have this answer, and I don't have to tie my life into it as if I did. And that is incredibly freeing. I wanted to call out something that Matt said as a response, and I think, because I know my response would have been, just community, just a place I can go hang out. But I think this kind of comment goes straight to the meat of it, and a non-judgmental friend to talk to. Like, oh my goodness, how much of a difference would that have made for me? I had to have all of these conversations with my wife, not knowing if she was going to be okay with the things that I was thinking about. You know what I'm saying? And that's really scary, not knowing, hey, is this the conversation that's going to end my marriage? Is this the conversation that's going to ruin my family? So it was very tough. I had to kind of skate on thin ice. I knew outside of, my household, I couldn't talk to anybody. So definitely just having a non-judgmental friend to talk to. Hell, they didn't even have to be a friend, just a non-judgmental anybody. It could have, thankfully there's Chat GPT now, which sometimes suck, but that's a whole nother conversation. But
I've actually asked ChatGPT to comfort me before. I'm like, I'm anxious about this, comfort me, and it's done a really good job. And I'm like, this is bizarre.
I don't know if y'all know, but my wife and I are working on an app that helps people help people with critical thinking skills. And that's it was something that I was doing with ChatGPT that led me to that kind of idea that, holy snap, we're in a different world now, because this device, or this learning language model, is actually just trained on data. So essentially, I try to get people not to think of it as AI, because it's not quite that yet. It's more like talking to a book. It's like talking to fuck that. It's like talking to a library. It's
It's
talking
like a
to a
personalized
library.
search engine almost.
It is. It is. And it has the ability to kind of learn from you while talking to you. And so talk to you in a way that really relates to you. And so it creates an environment that is something that most humans cannot get outside of that as of yet. And that's absolute safety. You can say anything to it and it's not going to judge you. You can say something stupid and it's not going to call you stupid, which there are so many people who won't ask questions because they're afraid somebody's going to call them stupid. And so, don't get me pitching about my little startup idea, but no, that you're absolutely right about that. I love that. I love that. All right, man, this has been good. And I mean, we made it all the way through. Do you two have any closing thoughts before we roll out tonight? It's night for me, daytime for you guys. You're probably going to go do brunch or something.
Yeah, just getting started.
No, I think I'd just like to say thank you for having me on the channel. It's been really, really enjoyable conversation and great topic. So thanks for having me on.
Absolutely.
Only thing I would say is that anyone watching this tomorrow, right? You're gonna be on my channel, Darante, and
Yes,
we're gonna be discussing a handful, not a specific amount, maybe, but of verses that we struggled with while being Christians, that we tried to like justify or tried to make sense with the rest of the Bible, or maybe with our specific doctrines, and kind of bouncing those off each other, discussing those. Excuse me. And I mean, I'm just gonna plug it. Like, sometime, Dave, have me on your channel. Make a really catchy, make it just like an absolute like clickbait thumbnail, because I'm not gonna get you any views. But like some conspiracy, like wacky stuff. Let's do it. Let's do something wacky that you don't normally do.
I did just subscribe to your channel, and I'll be excited to watch tomorrow's episode with Darante. So yeah, it's really exciting.
All right, look forward to it.
Well, listen, thank you both for being on. And Tom, I am going to respond to your message. I have seen it today. It has been a very busy day. But I think we always kind of do that. I think we literally respond to each other 12 hours after after we get the messages. But again, thank you both. This has been beautiful.
Just quickly, we have 33 people watching and 6 likes. Hit the like button and help the algorithm. Come on, click and clack that bad boy. Lay hands on the like button and the subscribe button. Darante deserves
it. Agree. I love it. Thank you, David. Thank you, Tom. I'm gonna pull you back screen now. Audience, I want you to know what's so beautiful about this is I think I sent this invite to them over a month ago. And they both signed up immediately. So I was really glad to be able to have this conversation. And I actually want to do this more. I want to do more group therapies. I don't know how regular they'll be because the group therapy conversations will never be just me. These are supposed to be group conversations. And I think there's safety in that. I hate to kind of bounce back to scripture, but there was a scripture that said there's safety in the multitude of counsel, but I don't want you to see this as counsel. That's not what we're doing. We're not necessarily counseling you. We're sharing our experiences, sharing our thoughts, and we're all learning from each other. I've learned an immense amount tonight. From both David and Tom, and then even from some of you in the chat. I mean, this has just been absolutely amazing for me, and I hope we can do this more. We'll definitely have some more conversations around this. So as we're wrapping up, let me kind of do my little spiel. If you haven't already liked the video, I really don't know what you're waiting on. It's not going to jump out at you. You got to press the button. So go ahead and like the video, subscribe to the channel. Consider joining our community. Check out the merch. I promise you, it's dope. And what do you got to lose? Check it out. And consider volunteering. Like, seriously, we need people helping us build this community. Let's not make this a personality cult. Let's build something that's actually people-centric, that's actually progressive-centric, progressive thinking. That's the word I'm looking for. And that's actually going to make people safe and all of those great things. Now I'm looking over in the chat. So I am, of course, man. Yes, I get distracted. I told y'all I have elder eyes, so I have to see what you're saying, or I think you're talking about me. Yes, they are dope. Thank you. I have one that says Sacred Cow Grill Master. Who wouldn't want that? Who doesn't want Sacred Cow Barbecue? Everybody wants Sacred Cow Barbecue. You can be a vegan and have Sacred Cow Barbecue. It's good for everybody. All right, no, but seriously, thank you all for hanging out with us tonight. I love you all. I enjoy you all. I hope you're just living your best lives and becoming your best selves and all that good jazz. But I got to get up out of here. And so until next time, keep rising, stay progressive, and stay beautiful. Oh, my wife popped in. Look at her. There she is. There she is. She's been in the chat a few times. I'm going to hit this closer, and I'll see y'all later. Keep doing what you do.